The eastern areas of Scotland should be mostly dry, but there will still be some showers pushing in from the west, filtering through at times. Similar across Northern Ireland, some showers before some longer spells of rain just start to edge their way in further west. Some drizzly showers perhaps across northwest England and parts of Wales, but still very dry for many areas. Through the overnight period, we'll start to see a bit of a north-south split in our weather, turning very unsettled towards the northwest with some spells of rain pushing their way northeastwards. This will start to turn quite heavy for some areas during the early parts of the morning. Once again, a mix of cloud, and it's likely the clearest skies will be across the far southeast, but for most it's a slightly warmer night to come, especially across southern areas of England and Wales. Now on Tuesday, quite a lot of rain around towards the north. This will gradually push its way northeastward, still with some heavy areas of rain at times, eventually clearing for much of Northern Ireland, northern parts of England and Scotland, so brighter here by the afternoon, bar a few showers. But towards the south of this, it's still another dry day with some sunny spells by the afternoon. Temperatures higher compared to what we'll have today as well, pushing into the high 20s, if not the low 20s across the north.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for making GB News Radio such a huge success. Whether you're in the car, on the go, or listening at home, thank you for choosing us as your radio station.
This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. In Kent, drivers on the M20 eastbound at Junction 7 will encounter roadworks with one lane closed. Northamptonshire's M1 southbound at Junction 18 is also undergoing improvements, causing a lane restriction. West Yorkshire's A1M is restricted due to roadworks between junctions 43 and 44 northbound. On Birmingham's M6, road upgrades cause lane closures between junctions 5 and 4A. Meanwhile, Buckinghamshire's M40 southbound between junction 5 and 4 is affected by maintenance. Cheshire's M56 eastbound and Coventry's M45 eastbound near Rugby Face lane closures. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Bold.
They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way. You will not want to miss it, trust me.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People are now tuning in to GB News.
They shape our programmes, we try and incorporate them in our shows as much as we can.
Our audience are really interactive.
Our listeners, our viewers, they're growing. And that's because they tell their friends and family about what we're doing here at GB News.
It feels like the depth of that connection has strengthened as well.
Thank you so much for speaking to us on GB News.
Come and say hello to everybody that's here from GB News.
It's been an exceptional event.
We've come a long way here now.
Thank you, GB News!
What's so unique about GB News viewers is that they really, really love our country.
And they talk about us so proudly. We're on a journey together.
We are here for all of Britain. We believe in this country, we believe in its people, and we believe in all of the communities who live here.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
Good morning, it's 9:30 on Monday the 27th of July, live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Cameron Walker and Miriam Cates.
Well, is it time to scrap council tax and stamp duty? Reports suggest that our new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, is considering replacing both with a new tax on the value of your home, as Labour explores alternative ways to tax property. But what could it mean for homeowners as well as buyers and sellers?
And get up and go to work. Young people will face being stripped of their benefits unless they agree to do some form of training or volunteer work under proposed measures, as ministers look for ways to rein in the UK's ballooning £333 billion welfare bill.
German police have shot dead the man suspected of driving a van into a crowd near Berlin's Pride Festival, killing a woman and injuring at least 29 others.
And British tourists being urged to flee southwestern France as apocalyptic wildfires close in on Bordeaux. More than 250,000 people have been evacuated, with flames now at the city's gates. We'll bring you the latest.
And a police DEI cash splash. A bombshell new report has revealed that diversity, equality and inclusion initiatives have cost the police £631 million since 2020. Should they be spending the money on protecting the public instead? I think we know the answer to that, Cameron.
And how do you feel about being forced to vote? Well, Andy Burnham's reportedly considering it. Proposals seen by the Prime Minister's advisers suggest a £10 fine for those who do not cast a ballot, with a none of the above option to be included.
We're attacking them tonight. We're taking out all of their capability for anything having to do with the straight, with the hormone straight.
Well, that was Donald Trump 2 weeks ago, but now the US president has paused plans to escalate the war on Iran after being warned that the US is running low on missiles. With China eyeing up Taiwan, is this the right move from the president? Well, Cameron, the school holidays only just begun, but we're already seeing travel chaos across Europe. You had your own experience last night, didn't you?
Yes, I had a lovely time at Gatwick Airport, to flying back into Gatwick Airport last night. It's flying back from Spain. I was very lucky. Spain was nice in the part which wasn't on fire. And the captain comes on. I had obviously seen the news, and he said, if you haven't seen the news, there's no running water at Gatwick Airport, and therefore toilets not working. So he strongly suggested going on the plane rather than at the airport. But luckily, by the time I landed, which was quite late, it was midnight, so I've had quite a lot of sleep last night, the toilets were back up and running. But it just made me think, you know, how can a whole major international airport shut down because of a water issue? It's insane.
Yeah, well, I think it was related to power. And then, of course, in France, I was on holiday in Biscarrosse, the very area that is now inflamed next to Bordeaux. I had 2 wonderful weeks there, and it's just unbelievable to think that so much of that is now evacuated, burning, and the French authorities not knowing what comes next. I don't know if you've seen reports this morning about this pyrocumulonimbus, which is an incredible artificial cloud created by wildfires that can cause lightning strikes and thunder and even more fire. It's terrifying.
But of course, you don't need to go on holiday abroad. We've got our own reporter, Isabel Fekulak, in Poole for us, which isn't on fire. But we would love to know your thoughts about all of this. Send us your comments, posting gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's your 60-second news updates with Bethany Elsie.
Thank you both. Good morning. The headlines from the GB Newsroom. Andy Burnham is warning the NHS will collapse unless action is taken to fix social care, promising to bring significant change as quickly as he can. He's also reportedly considering action to reduce the welfare bill. Tourists are being warned to stay away from southwest France, where wildfires are now just 9 miles from Bordeaux. Officials there are considering a total evacuation of the city. Around 300,000 people across France and Spain have been forced to leave their homes. Meanwhile, emergency services in the UK are bracing for further wildfires here as another heat wave is expected to hit this week, bringing temperatures of up to 33 degrees. The terror suspect in the Berlin Pride attack has been shot and killed by police. 21-year-old Abdul Balu, who is accused of having Islamist links, drove his van into a crowd of people at the event, killing one woman and injuring 29 others. 2 people have been killed and 5 others injured, including a 2-year-old child, after a shooting at a food festival in the US state of Seattle. The suspect is now in police custody. Those are your headlines for now. I'll have a full roundup for you at 10 a.m.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello, good morning and welcome. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Miriam Cates and Cameron Walker, who's standing in for Andrew Pierce.
Good morning to you. And Andy Burnham is reportedly planning to crack down on youth sickness benefits in an effort to reallocate billions of pounds in funding for social care and defence.
Well, young people face being stripped of their benefits unless they agree to do some form of training or volunteer work under the proposed measures.
Well, the proposal comes as part of an effort to reduce the country's £333 billion welfare bill, and ministers hope that training and volunteer work will help to bring sick young people back into the workforce.
Very interesting, Cameron. I mean, we all have become so aware of this huge number, 1 million NEETs, people not in education, employment or training, and the massive rise in the number of people, young people claiming benefits for conditions like ADHD and anxiety. And the big question, why aren't they working? Why are you allowed to claim money for these kind of conditions? But it's a good place to start, I think, with trying to reduce the benefits.
It certainly is, and all of this seems to have ballooned, official figures show, since the coronavirus pandemic and the ballooning in, as you say, anxiety, depression, ADHD. Are we getting too soft? Are there genuinely more medical issues now? Well, let's speak to somebody who perhaps can analyse the politics of all of this for us, and that is GB News' Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood. Tom, good morning to you. So what exactly is government planning to do with this?
Well, look, there's a crisis in the amount that we're spending on disability benefits. 3 governments now have acknowledged this. The Conservative government, in their final year or 2 in office, saw the very foothills of this sort of expansion curve, the more and more money that is being spent on disability and health benefits every single day. Every single day, thousands more people register for these benefits. By some assessments, 1 in 4 Britons is now considered disabled in some way, and clearly the government thinks that this is very, very worrying for the public purse. Ultimately, we are now spending more as a country on health and disability benefits than we spend on the military. Now, that's an extraordinary sum of money, and as I say, it is expanding almost week on week. Those numbers are only going up. The last iteration of this Labour government, under Chancellor Rachel Reeves, tried to reduce the increase of that spend. It was the very famous defeat that they had in the building behind me. Perhaps it's paved the way for Keir Starmer's loss of authority and loss of office. That was, of course, the rebellion over the £5 billion reduction that Rachel Reeves wanted to make in this spend. Talking to Labour MPs, though, they think that the Starmer government went about this in the wrong way. They simply were saying, in effect, look, we're spending too much money here, we've got to save some money, here's how we're going to save the money. Andy Burnham might well be taking a much more deft political tack here. Not just saying, look, we're spending too much money, we've got to reduce the budget, but actually talking about the livelihoods of the people that are currently on disability benefits with no requirement to look for work, to have a job, particularly people with mental health issues. Perhaps the very best thing for some of these people would be interjecting routine into their lives, would be going out and doing training or work. So ultimately, there's a completely different way to look at this as an opportunity to help people rather than just an opportunity to save money. And this is where conditionality comes in. The Conservative government, following the reforms to universal credit under Ian Duncan Smith, got the number of people on job seekers, well, just looking for work, down to very, very low levels. It was all conditional on getting that money. You had to check in with jobs programs. You had to go every week to make sure that you were looking for work. But the one area that was completely free from all of those checks was, of course, disability benefits. So whilst unemployment benefits is very, very low, and technically the number of people unemployed is very, very low in this country, there has been a commensurate rise in the number of people on disability benefits, which doesn't technically count as unemployed and has no mandate for people to look for work while they're on them. Now, if a very simple formula switch came about, which seems to be what this government is now intimating, that there should be an element of conditionality to those benefits, that people should, in many cases, see what work they could do, well, that might have some pretty large implications.
Of show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. I mean, if you're aged 16 to 18 and you can get £194 a week by saying you have problems with anxiety, why on earth wouldn't you? What isn't the answer just to stop paying these benefits altogether and say anxiety, ADHD are no longer qualifying conditions for benefits? Give people notice, of course, 6 months a year, we're going to change the system, but then just stop it altogether. It didn't used to be the case that these conditions were given any payouts at all.
Yeah, it does seem strange that some of these conditions are put in the same category as much more obvious or serious incapacities. And yet, there's another element to this too, which is perhaps why we saw this explode after COVID. So many of these assessments are now done over the phone, without even looking into the eyes of the person who is doing the assessment. Now, studies have shown that actually the amount of times that people withdraw from their interview when it is an in-person interview, that is to say, get cold feet the morning of, seems to be much, much higher than the number of times people do so over the phone. Could that be because people are frankly exaggerating what they have a little bit? Who's to say? But it is interesting, that difference in the grant rates between in-person interviews and interviews over the phone. So that's perhaps another area to look at.
Tom, another story during the rounds today is the government actively considering options to replace council tax and stamp duty with a flat 0.48% annual charge on a home's current value. Given the fact that homes up and down the country, it's a broad range of prices per physical house, is this going to work in practice?
Well, the Labour MP Jonathan Hinder took to social media last night to extol the virtues of this. Clearly, it is a bit of a broken system that we have right now, where the amount of council tax that you are charged is based on what your house price was in the 1990s. And no politician has grasped this nettle in the previous 35 years, simply because it's going to be difficult to revalue. There are some homes today that are worth a lot more, particularly in London in the southeast, than they were in the 90s. Meanwhile, there are homes in the north of England, for instance, that have basically maintained their value compared to 1990s levels. This has ended up with a very peculiar system where there are homes worth millions of pounds, where I am, here in Westminster, that pay less council tax than homes that are worth less than a quarter of that in, say, Greater Manchester. So it's always been a bugbear of policymakers to say this should be fixed. However, politicians have never wanted to fix it for the very real reason that you will have hundreds of thousands, perhaps even millions of perhaps more elderly people living in properties that have exploded in value over the last 20 years, but who don't have the cash on hand to pay far, far higher rates of council tax commensurate to the new value of their property that has grown over decades. Perhaps they bought the property when it was worth a lot less. It will be a difficult reform to pass, but if there is a Prime Minister who might pass it, perhaps the Prime Minister who wants every single policy to pass the Makerfield test rather than the Mayfair test, perhaps then he might be the person to do that. One thing I would say, however, there is a downside to basing a new annual tax on the current value of homes, of property. And that is, it's a disincentive for people to make their homes better. It's a disincentive for home improvements. It's not the same as a land value tax, which in the past Andy Burnham has advocated for, which would be a tax based on the value of the land the house sits on, rather than how fancy the house is that sits on top of that land.
Tom, thank you very much. That's Tom Harwood in Westminster. I mean, Cameron, this is the problem with the fact that we're living in a housing bubble where prices do not reflect values at all. In some parts of the country, they've ballooned simply because of access to cheap credit and not sufficient planning reforms.
Yeah.
It would be ridiculous for someone who lives in a £1 million house now, an elderly person, let's say, who bought it for £25,000 in 1978, to suddenly be given the highest annual tax bill in the country. I mean, that's just, I don't think this will fly, simply because there are so many people in that position where they might be asset rich, but they are cash poor and they will not be able to afford this kind of rate.
Exactly. It does seem ludicrous. I mean, just for example, Bandee Home in Wandsworth pays £1,020 a year in council tax, compared to Hartlepool, £2,556. From the other perspective, it is unfair.
No, that is unfair, yeah.
You know, if you are a pensioner who just gets a state pension and you live in a £1 million house which you bought for 50 grand 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Exactly, it's not fair.
Well, council tax is there to pay for local council services, so wouldn't it be better for it to be based on how many people are in your household or something like that? That seems much fairer.
Quite possibly. OK, the time is 9:45 and you're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Still to come.
Police DEI cash splash. A bombshell new report has revealed diversity, equality and inclusion initiatives have cost the police £630 million since 2020. But should they be spending the money on protecting the public? I think I know what you'll think. But after the break...
German police have shot dead the man suspected of driving a van into a crowd near Berlin's Pride Festival, killing a woman and injuring at least 29 people.
But first, if you're thinking of heading abroad, here's the forecast for some of our top European destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello there. Another heat wave is set to impact much of Europe, bringing intense sunshine. There's very little sign of any rain. Across parts of Iberia, temperatures could push back up into the high 30s, if not the low 40s degrees Celsius. The heat may be enough to produce some very hit or miss showers across parts of Italy, but not really any significant rainfall and not really sign of much rainfall to come. The sunshine is set to continue alongside the high temperatures.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
It is really exciting. We've got 1 million people living with dementia in this country, and about 65%, 70% of them have Alzheimer's disease. This is a condition where a protein called amyloid beta builds up in plaques within the brain and interferes with the connection of nerve cells. It's a cruel disease, as I know you're aware. It robs families of the relative that they once loved, the personality that they knew, and it's the leading cause of death in this country. So, numbers are only increasing as the ageing population grows. But here we have in phase 3 clinical trials, which is the last stage of trials before a regulatory body approves it for use, which appears to clear some of these plaques within a few weeks. Now, that's really exciting.
GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
What does this kind of day mean to you, kind of coming and doing this every year?
Well, I feel that I'm doing this for my wife, because she used to sell poppies properly, really, and I used to help her for 20 odd years. And I feel like I'm doing it for her, really. But it is nice to think that everybody appreciate what we did for being in the forces.
But tell me about your service, because you got sent out to the Far East, didn't you?
Yes. I just got engaged because I didn't think I was going to get called up, but then I did.
In your jacket here, you've got one medal for national service and one for that Hong Kong medal for that.
To be honest, I was 18 years old and I was very excited about going. It was an adventure to me.
The People's Channel. Britain's Newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
Weight loss jabs could help children as young as 6 who are living with obesity. When did we start saying living with obesity? Can we not say obese children? Is that not politically correct? Well, delighted to be joined now by Sarah LeBrock, Director of All About Obesity. Sarah, I think a lot of people will feel slightly uneasy about children getting on these jabs, simply because we sort of expect, I don't know, diets to be managed by parents.
Yeah, I can totally understand why people would think that. But the point we're not talking about just overweight children here. We're talking about children living with obesity. And interestingly, you say, why do we say living with obesity? It's because they're living with a chronic condition.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. It is 9:50. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Well, the man suspected of driving a van into a crowd at a pride parade in Berlin has been shot and killed after officials suggested it was an Islamist terror attack.
Abdul Balit was a German citizen with Lebanese heritage and was previously arrested in Lebanon for trying to join Islamic State and planning a terrorist attack.
Well, one woman was killed and at least 29 people injured when a van was driven into revellers. The suspect then emerged from the car and began attacking people with what's been described as a stabbing weapon, probably a machete.
Well, joining us now is GB News' Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, arrested because he tried to join ISIS, somehow was not in prison. Why?
Well, that wasn't the only offence. This is a massive blunder by the authorities in Germany because you had a history of robbery and assault, then an extremist history as well, where you're right, he tried last year to go off and join ISIS. He went to Turkey and then to Lebanon, met up with members of that terrorist organisation, was jailed for 3 months for that. Back in Germany this year, he was then convicted for plotting a terrorist attack. He was given 1 year and 10 months as a prison term, but that was effectively suspended. He was put under supervision of the probation service in Germany, but then went on to commit this horrific terrorist attack. So it absolutely goes to show you that their systems are deeply flawed when it comes to monitoring these extremists in their own midst, and of course comes at a time of a very significant terrorist threat in Germany, but in so many other European countries that we know of. France is a big issue that it's grappling with, linked to mass migration, the asylum system. We know that Germany took well over 1 million people from Syria under Angela Merkel's time as Chancellor of that country, and only now are they starting to see very significant issues linked to some of that immigrant population.
And a blunder perhaps as well by the event's organisers, who came straight out and said that the real threat was the far right, when clearly this was an Islamist attack. There have been a dozen such attacks in Germany in just the past 10 years.
Well, listen, we hear that from the authorities in multiple Western countries all of the time. You know, they fall over themselves to mention this bogeyman of the far right. I was at a briefing at Scotland Yard just a few weeks ago on the latest terrorism threat. The vast majority of the terror threat facing this country in terms of the serious threat to life is from Islamist extremism, but yet they were at pains to tell us the fastest growing area is far right extremism. But really that pales in terms of the threat from Islamist extremism.
Mark White, thank you very much for that.
Well, still ahead, how do you feel about being forced to vote? Well, Andy Burnham's reportedly considering it. Proposals seen by the Prime Minister's advisers suggest a £10 fine for those who do not cast a ballot, with a none-of-the-above option to be included.
I think it's an interesting idea because at the moment only a small fraction of young people vote, lots more people who are older vote, and the accusation is that politicians then tailor their policies one way.
And we wouldn't be the first country to do so.
No, we wouldn't. Australia have been doing it for 100 years.
Indeed. Well, let us know what you think. This is Britain's Newsroom. Britain's Newsroom on Britain's News Channel. Squash.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Fewer showers around compared to what we had yesterday. Still very dry across much of England and Wales. Not only that, but we're also going to see temperatures climb through the early part of this week. For now, though, mostly dry for many areas. Some sunshine across much of the east, clouding over from the west through the course of the morning. Just a few showers filtering through, but actually most of these easing away by the afternoon. So mostly dry day ahead for many areas. Some fairly decent sunny spells across much of England and Wales, certainly towards the south. This is where we'll see the best of the temperatures, highs of around 26 degrees Celsius, but even further north, highs widely in the low 20s, so still feeling warm in the brightness. Then to finish off the day, across many eastern areas of Scotland, it should be mostly dry, but there will still be some showers pushing in from the west, filtering through at times. Similar across Northern Ireland, some showers before some longer spells of rain just start to edge their way in further west. Some drizzly showers perhaps across northwest England and parts of Wales, but still very dry for many areas. Through the overnight period, we'll start to see a bit of a north-south split in our weather, turning very unsettled towards the northwest with some spells of rain pushing their way northeastwards. This will start to turn quite heavy for some areas during the early parts of the morning. Once again, a mix of cloud, and it's likely the clearest skies will be across the far southeast. But for most, it's a slightly warmer night to come, especially across southern areas of England and Wales. Now on Tuesday, quite a lot of rain around towards the north. This will gradually push its way northeastward, still with some heavy areas of rain at times, eventually clearing for much of Northern Ireland, northern parts of England and Scotland, so brighter here by the afternoon, bar a few showers. But towards the south of this, it's still another dry day with some sunny spells by the afternoon. Temperatures higher compared to what we'll have today as well, pushing into the high 20s, if not the low 20s, across the north.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News each and every week.
This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. In Kent, drivers on the M20 eastbound at Junction 7 will encounter roadworks with one lane closed. Northamptonshire's M1 southbound at Junction 18 is also undergoing improvements, causing a lane restriction. West Yorkshire's A1M is restricted due to roadworks between junctions 43 and 44 northbound. On Birmingham's M6, road upgrades cause lane closures between junctions 5 and 4A. Meanwhile, Buckinghamshire's M40 southbound between junction 5 and 4 is affected by maintenance. Cheshire's M56 eastbound and Coventry's M45 eastbound near Rugby Face Lane closures. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
It's the Great British Giveaway Golden Summer Celebration. Your chance to win 2 fantastic prizes. There's an incredible £60,000 in tax-free cash. Plus, you'll also get your hands on a fine gold bar worth over £5,000. For a chance to win £60,000 in tax-free cash and a real gold bar, text GOLD to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB22 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 21st of August. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pulled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
At the stroke of midnight, the news doesn't stop, and neither do we.
Day in, day out. Forget stuffy late night TV shows. We're giving you a front row ticket to the centre of the political universe.
Because breaking news doesn't wait for the morning.
And neither do we. Join us for one of the most controversial and volatile times of politics in human history.
A very big story.
Big story over here.
You won't get this anywhere else. The Late Show live at midnight, every night.
Only on GB News.
Britain is not just a geographical expression. We are a people bound together by history and culture that are distinctively British. Join me to celebrate our music, theatre, artworks and literature, which we can explore and enjoy together.
Everybody's welcome.
Sunday with Michael Portillo. Every Sunday at 11 a.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's 10 o'clock on Monday, the 27th of July. We are live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Cameron Walker and Miriam Cates.
Time to scrap council tax and stamp duty. Reports suggest that Andy Burnham is considering replacing both with a new tax on the value of your home as Labour explores alternative ways to tax property. What could it mean for homeowners, buyers and sellers?
Well, it's been the political issue that politicians have wanted to avoid for a generation. But the reason they've wanted to avoid this issue is that any reorganisation will create winners, sure, but also a lot of losers.
Well, get up and go to work. Young people will face being stripped of their benefits unless they agree to do some form of training or volunteer work. This is under the proposed measures as ministers look for ways to rein in the UK's ballooning £333 billion welfare bill.
German police have shot dead the man suspected of driving a van into a crowd near Berlin's Pride Festival, killing a woman and injuring at least 29 people.
Elsewhere, British tourists are being urged to flee southwestern France as apocalyptic wildfires close in on Bordeaux. More than 250,000 people have so far been evacuated, with flames now at the city's gates. We'll bring you the latest.
We're attacking them tonight. We're taking out all of their capability for anything having to do with the Strait, with the Hormuz Strait.
Well, that was President Donald Trump 2 weeks ago, but now he's paused plans to escalate the war on Iran after being warned that the US is running low on missiles. Well, with China eyeing up Taiwan, is this the right move from the president?
And police DEI cash splash. A bombshell new report has revealed diversity, equality and inclusion initiatives have cost the police £631 million since 2020. But should they be spending the money on protecting the public instead?
And how do you feel about being forced to vote? Well, Andy Burnham's reportedly considering it, and proposals seen by the Prime Minister's advisers suggest a £10 fine for those who do not cast a ballot, with a none of the above option to be included.
And school holidays are well underway, and with another heatwave hitting the UK, British families are sticking around for the holidays. So what are Brits loving most about the holiday season?
Well, I'm here at Haven's Rockley Park in Poole. Of course, they've been saying that each year more and more people are choosing to staycation in the UK. This year, they're expecting it to be a record-breaking summer for holidaymakers. We'll be chatting to them, and you can join me shortly as I'll be taking centre stage with the Seaside Squad.
Oh, thanks, Isabel. I think we should probably explain to our radio listeners that something very strange just came on our screen. Isabel stood next to a tiger and an elephant.
Oh, it's a tiger. I was trying to work out what it was. Giant models of them in the holiday park.
Yeah, well, you know, adults in suits, like a Disney World, but in somewhere in Poole. Yes, interesting. Well, of course, you can go holidaying
I'm not quite sure
anywhere.
what else
I'm not sure what else to say.
I mean, the question we asked is, what are Brits looking forward to about the holidays? And then we had a picture of these two great oversized animals. But, you know, maybe if that floats your boat. I mean, sitting by the pool, I think, is more my thing. But with weather like it is at the moment in the UK, staycations are almost better than going abroad. I mean, it's too hot in France and Spain, isn't it? And of course, that's one of the causes of these awful, awful forest fires that we're seeing.
And of course, we've got two massive ones in France and Spain. Where I was in Spain, in the south of Spain this weekend, there was huge warning signs everywhere saying extreme risk of fires. And these kind of things just keep happening, don't they? We need to become more resilient.
We do, and there are more things that can be done, but ultimately temperatures are going up. And I know in France, in that region of France this year, we were talking to people where we were staying a couple of weeks ago in Biscarrosse, where it's now aflame. And they were saying, well, every year we have 2 or 3 days where it hits 40 degrees. But by that point, they'd had 5 or 6 weeks where it was regularly hitting 40. And of course, the ground becomes so dry that it's not surprising that those fires spread. But it sounds like the French authorities are doing everything that they can. But President Macron is coming under criticism for having cut fire department budgets year on year. And actually what they're facing at the moment is just not enough equipment.
Yeah, uncontrollable. Let us know what you think. Send us your views and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. But first, here is the news with Bethany Elsey.
Thank you both. Good morning. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom at 5 minutes past 10. Andy Burnham has warned the NHS will collapse unless action is taken to fix social care. In his first major interview since becoming Prime Minister, he promised to bring significant change as quickly as he can. Meanwhile, the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, has urged him to rule out tax rises or increased borrowing to pay for the reforms. The PM has also said the government has to get really serious about reducing the welfare bill. He suggested ministers could tighten the conditions to receive support while insisting more should be done to help people back into work. It comes as the number of people claiming personal independence payment has passed 4 million for the first time, roughly doubling since 2019, with many teenagers claiming the disability benefit for conditions such as anxiety. The terror suspect in the Berlin Pride attack has been shot and killed by police. 21-year-old Abdul Balou, who is accused of having Islamist links, drove his van into a crowd of people at the event, killing 1 woman and injuring 29 others. Police found him after an hours-long manhunt. It's understood they opened fire after he ran at officers with a weapon. The German Interior Minister has raised the country's terror threat level, warning other copycat attacks couldn't be ruled out. Tourists are being warned to stay away from southwest France, where flames are now just 9 miles away from Bordeaux, and officials are considering a total evacuation of the city. Around 300,000 people across France and Spain have been forced to leave their homes as severe wildfires continue to burn. More than 1,000 military personnel have been deployed to help with the response. Travel journalist Simon Calder told GB News of some advice for those who've booked to visit the affected area.
Clearly, this is a desperate situation for the communities there and people putting their lives on their line to fight the fires and so on. But as you say, there are many, many people booked to travel to this beautiful area of France who are now thinking, what do I do? British Airways is saying if you booked in or out of Bordeaux, you can change your flight. But otherwise, if you fixed up everything on your own, it's kind of a matter of talking to each of the people involved and hoping that you can get things moved. But there's no automatic entitlement, and your travel insurance won't necessarily be of any help.
Meanwhile, the UK's 4th heatwave of the year is on its way this week, with temperatures expected to reach up to 33 degrees. A yellow heat health alert has been issued from Tuesday morning to Friday across the East and West Midlands, the south of England and Yorkshire. Emergency Services says they're bracing for further wildfires as firefighters in England and Wales are already battling 19 significant blazes. 2 people have been killed and 5 others injured, including a 2-year-old, after a shooting in the US state of Seattle. The city's mayor says the suspect, who opened fire at a food festival, has been taken into police custody. Officers are urging people to avoid the area, and Mark Taylor Canfield, who was a musician playing at the event, questioned whether there should have been stronger security.
A lot of people didn't react at first because we thought, oh, it must be firecrackers or something. I mean, nobody thought that it was dangerous. But then there was a second volley, and that's when we saw people storming through the area. And all of my friends and I, we grabbed whatever equipment we had, our music equipment, and just started running because we felt like our lives could be in danger at that point. And it was, the crowd obviously knew something we didn't.
Former funeral director Robert Bush will be sentenced this week after admitting 67 offences that spanned more than a decade and affected hundreds of grieving families. The former owner of Legal C Independent Funeral Directors in Hull pleaded guilty to fraud, preventing lawful burials, stealing from charities and giving families the wrong ashes. His sentencing at Hull Crown Court is expected to last 5 days, with more than 100 victims due to give impact statements. Those are the latest headlines. Let's have a look at the finance.
Taking the ups and downs in our stride. Stilts Home Lifts sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
The pound will buy you $1.33 and 1.17 euros. The price of gold is £3,068 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 10,777 points.
GB News Finance Report, brought to you by Stilts Home Lifts.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom, live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Cameron Walker and Miriam Cates.
Yes, good morning. Well, our new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, is reportedly planning a crackdown on youth sickness benefits. This is in an effort to reallocate billions of pounds in funding for social care and defence.
Well, young people will face being stripped of their benefits unless they agree to do some form of training or volunteer work under the proposed measures.
Well, this proposal comes as part of an effort to reduce the country's £333 billion welfare bill. Ministers are hoping that training and voluntary work will help to bring sick young people back into the workforce.
Well, joining us now is GB News' Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood. Tom, what more can you tell us about this?
Well, it's a crisis, frankly, that afflicted this government, it afflicted the last government, and the very tail end of the previous Conservative government too. 3 prime ministers have tried to grapple with this extraordinary growth in spending on disability benefits in particular. And the most peculiar thing about this huge rise in spending is it's not focused on the old or people who we might think of as more traditionally infirm. This is overwhelmingly concentrated amongst young people in this country. Disability benefits, in many cases, allowing these people to simply not look for work, be in that category of not in education, employment or training long term. And that's a problem. Twofold for the government. Number one, because we're spending more now on health and disability benefits than we spend on our entire armed forces. And number two, for every person who is out of work on benefits, they're not just getting money from the state, they're also a loss to the general welfare of the country, because if they were in a job, they would be contributing. So it's a double whammy that people are not contributing. And Andy Burnham seems to think that he has a solution here. We're getting the very start of a conversation here, and it's going to be, I think, a long conversation, because ultimately what happened just over a year ago was one of the things that helped bring down Keir Starmer. Rachel Reeves saw this problem in benefits spending, tried to bring down this bill by £5 billion. Well, that's not actually quite true. She tried to bring down the increase in the bill by £5 billion. So under her plans, the bill would have still gone up, just not by as much. Well, that was too much for Labour backbenchers. Of course, there was that 80-plus MP rebellion, enough to wipe out the substantial majority that the Labour Party has in the House of Commons. One of the things that really destabilised Keir Starmer's authority as Prime Minister. Andy Burnham thinks he can go about this in a different way. He thinks that he should be talking more about how to help people who are currently perhaps experiencing anxiety or mental health issues, but that the benefits system says, well, the best thing for you to do then is stay in bed, don't have routine, don't get a job. Clearly, that is wrong-headed. Clearly, there are many cases where people might benefit from the routine of a job, or indeed training, or some form of contribution. So making these benefits contributory, having an element whereby people have to prove that they're doing something in order to receive some of these benefits, well, that could be a way to both help people and save money. But Andy Burnham has a really tough sell on his hands, because ultimately there are 80+ Labour MPs on the backbenches of the Labour Party who defeated an attempt to reform this once before and could do so again.
Tom Harwood there on College Green, although I think it should be renamed College Brown, looking by the state of the grass there, Tom. It's looking pretty dry. Tom, thank you very much. Well, joining us now is political correspondent at the New Statesman, Megan Kenyon. Megan, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on GB News. Now, how to reduce the benefits bill has been the bugbear of this Labour government so far. Keir Starmer famously failed. Do you think Andy Burnham is taking a better approach? Has he got more chance getting cuts through his backbenchers?
I think, yeah, you're right. Keir Starmer had a real problem getting those welfare cuts through last year, had possibly the biggest rebellion of his premiership. I think the difference here is that the cuts that we saw last year were to PIP, so an in-work benefit. And I think a lot of MPs, a lot of Labour MPs had constituents kind of coming to their offices, coming to their surgeries saying, you know, this is going to really affect me, this is going to affect my ability to work, which kind of, I think, sort of defeated the object a bit of what the government was trying to do there, because obviously, you know, the welfare bill is ballooning, there's a recognition that it needs to come down, but where do you kind of focus that? Do you focus it on something like PIP, which is helping people to work, or do you do what Andy Burnham is kind of is suggesting he might do now, which is look at youth sickness benefits? Now, we obviously had earlier this year Alan Milburn's sort of initial report into the NEETs crisis. And I think what was really interesting then was obviously we had a lot of focus on graduates kind of looking for jobs, not able to get them, applying for vacancies and facing, you know, sort of 1,000 other people going for the same job. I think there was what was slightly missing in that discussion was discussion of, you know, young people who are on sickness benefits. It's actually still quite difficult for them to sort of find work, find employment as well. But I think that actually, you know, there might be a pivot here. The Labour Party is called the Labour Party, the party of work. I think there's becoming a recognition that actually what they should be doing is sort of, you know, helping people back into work is kind of a noble goal. And
but that is a really good point, Meg. But that's the difference, isn't it, between being on unemployment benefit, where there is both a requirement but also support to find a job, and then disability benefits, where, let's be honest, a lot of people are left to languish. They're not reassessed. They can continue receiving those benefits, and there isn't the incentive or the stick, I suppose, to look for work. If those young people have to be out of work for whatever reason, it'd be far better for them to be on unemployment benefit, wouldn't it, than one of these PIP benefits?
Yeah, I think for sure there's definitely a recognition now that actually we need to be kind of helping people back into work. And you're right, if you can do that through sort of transferring them onto unemployment benefit. But I think even then the system of getting people back into work isn't quite working. And I think, you know, I was at an event in Parliament a few weeks ago where I was sort of walked through what it's like to kind of go into a job centre, and the system at the moment, because it's so overstretched, is really not helping people. It's not working in the round, it's not working holistically. Yeah. And actually I think there needs to be sort of a recognition that we need to fix that system as well, and that will help to bring down the welfare bill. You know, there's so many different things that can be done. It can't just be kind of a cost-cutting exercise, which I think the recognition was that that's what it was last time.
Sure. I mean, Megan, I'm just looking at some of the latest figures here. 75,000 payroll jobs for 16 to 18-year-olds have been lost since July 2024. And I'm just looking back at the Sir Keir Starmer administration, and we had a hike in employer national insurance, and, of course, the national minimum wage was raised. So the incentive for employers to provide these jobs for younger people isn't perhaps there like it was, you know, 5-10 years ago.
No, and I think, various people inside the Labour Party have kind of recognised that there needs to be more done to sort of make it easier for employers to take on younger people. I think things around apprenticeships and kind of looking at, how can we make that system work better? But yeah, obviously it's still very, very early days with Andy Burnham. He's only been in for a week. So I think, we're kind of starting to get a sense of what he might do differently. I mean, obviously he kind of took over a bit quicker than I think he maybe would have liked, and obviously didn't have a leadership contest. So we're sort of learning on the job as he is what his plans are for his premiership.
Well, Megan Kenyon, thank you so much for your analysis this morning. Great to have you on at GB News.
And we have some breaking news to bring you now. The wildlife presenter Bill Oddie has died at the age of 85, according to his agent. He was best known for being a presenter of Springwatch.
Yes, that's the breaking news that Bill Oddie has died. He was 85, a national treasure. I'm sure many of you at home will have great memories of him. And, of course, we'll bring you more on that when we have it.
We certainly will. Just to quickly say, Bill Oddie's agent has paid tribute to the intelligence and wit of Britain's best-loved bird watcher.
Well, coming up next, we'll be discussing all the day's news with our political commentator Sebastian Salek and the former Conservative advisor Thomas Day. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Do you trust what you're being told? Good, because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that, because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
We can allow.
Stop.
We can allow.
Politics, policy, parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace to
Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Here at GB News, we made a promise to tell your stories. And on the 6th of August, we're marking 5 years of doing exactly that.
Celebrate with us by having your say. Join in the debates live on TV and radio.
And meeting your favourite presenters across the country, from Leeds to Aberdeen, from Belfast to Barry Island.
Plus, join me in Essex for our biggest live show of the year. Scan the QR code or visit gbnews.com/celebrate. Terms and conditions apply.
It's 22 minutes past 10. You're watching Britain's Newsroom with Cameron Walker and Miriam Cates, and we're joined now in the studio by our panel, Sebastian Salek and Thomas Day. Lots of news. It's normally called the silly season in the summer, isn't it? But actually plenty of news, political and otherwise. And Sebastian, let's start with you. These awful wildfires in France and Spain. You've got family in France, haven't you? Not in the fire areas, but they're more widespread than's being reported.
They are. They're as far north as Rouen. They're really all over the place, which is really, really scary for a country that relies a lot on tourism as well. And you've got local officials in places like Bordeaux saying, if you are here on holiday, please leave. Please do not book a holiday here. So you wonder what the impact's going to be there. But then more widely, how do we cope with issues like this? It's not just the fires. It's, 40+ degree temperatures every summer now in places like France. Which is half of the people living there because their infrastructure is pretty much as bad as ours when it comes to, nice Victorian-era houses that look beautiful but don't keep out the heat very well.
That's right, isn't it? And they're used to kind of sporadic days of hot weather. It's a lot further south than here, but this sustained 6 or 8 weeks already, and we're only in the end of July, of 40 degrees.
Yeah, it's becoming, I think, for countries in Western Europe, Northern Europe, this sustained heat. We didn't build ourselves for it. We don't have, as you were saying, with Victorian houses, we're not up to standard for that. And just the water infrastructure to put out fires, where's the forest management as well? A lot of this prevention that happens in much hotter climates, comes into a lot of the prevention of fires to begin with. And so, I respect the French authorities for trying their best where you've got your entire country on fire. And we have obviously sporadic fires here in the UK at the moment. I was in South Wales near Cwmbran over the weekend where they've got lots of wildfires on the top of the valleys there. And, obviously we're seeing fires across the rest of the UK. And, the question for the government is how do we have lots more prevention as well as, more fire trucks is more, but how do you prevent them in the first place?
Yes, and Spain as well, and that is the question, isn't it? How easy is it for governments to quickly adapt and quickly become more resilient if this is going to become the norm?
Yeah, and especially at this part of the cycle where we've had a lot of heat waves, the grass is incredibly dry, this is the point where the fires start to happen. I've just come away from a lovely camping weekend and the grass was so dry and there are bans on fires now and you can't do the traditional bonfires, but it's quite sensible because it only takes one ember and then the whole place goes up.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we are going to have to face the fact that it is these hot summers are more and more frequent. But as we've been saying, there are things you can do. Fire breaks in the forests, more access to water. I mean, frankly, the French are being criticised for just not having access to enough of these fire planes. And OK, you'd say, do you really want to invest in all that, equipment? But I think they're going to have to.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for sure. It's one of those classic examples of everyone says, why didn't you buy these when the crisis is happening? But if the government was like, oh, we're going to buy 30 new fire planes and they announced it in December, everyone was going,
what a waste of money.
What a waste of money.
Yeah.
So the government's damned if they do and damned if they don't sometimes. But this is where I think they've just got to sometimes go out on a limb, in the UK where you had, say, people criticising COVID prevention and say, oh, why didn't you put all these protections in place? It's always easy to say after the fact. So sometimes the government just needs to get ahead of this and go, no, we need this. The science tells us we need it and we just need to get on with it.
But of course, it's not just the fire itself, it's the aftermath and how you do the clear up, how that's going to affect insurance, what things need to be rebuilt and then what resilience you're putting in place afterwards. And it's all of these questions which not just the French, not just the Spanish, but us and all of Western governments are having to grapple with.
Yeah, for sure. And look, it raises a wider conversation about how do we slow the rate of global warming. This is a legitimate discussion we have to have. There's no space for anybody to be denying climate change at a time like now.
Yes, but there's a difference, isn't there, between saying climate change is real, it's happening, to at least some extent it is a function of human activity. But on the other hand, we are so technologically advanced now, there is so much we can do to mitigate this that it doesn't have to be disastrous. It just needs some planning in order to take the, to change the situation so that we can actually deal with it.
Yeah.
We're not going to reverse it now, let's be honest.
Well, but I think you can mitigate as best you can and as well preventing actions that are going to make it worse, OK, we're now saying 40-degree summers are a reality. Are we going to be sat here in 5 years' time going 45-degree summers are now the reality? This would have been unthinkable. This is obviously a very rare summer insofar as it's just heat wave after heat wave after heat wave, a summer without rain, which, spare a moment for a farmer who might just want a little bit of rain on their crops. And so, the question is for governments is, OK, if we're going to have a summer like this every 10 years, what are we going to do to really mitigate?
But when it comes to the climate change debate, I think what turns off a lot of viewers and our listeners is when people really start hammering up the doom and gloom scenarios when it comes to climate change. And as you're kind of pointing out, Miriam, if it's adapting and just change it and being resilient, getting air conditioning installed and having these factors in place so you can prevent massive wildfires such as this and just having sensible solutions rather than panicking about the whole thing.
And there was a study the other day that showed that one of the factors leading to increased heat in the summers is cleaner skies.
Oh, yes.
And so a reduction in air pollution has actually pushed up the temperature. Anyway, let's move on. We'll talk about travel to France, but travel back to England hasn't been that easy either.
No.
Gatwick yesterday, passengers were left without running water or toilets for hours. You had a near miss.
I did have a near miss. So I was flying back into Gatwick, last night, and the pilot came on when I was before we took off and said, "If you need the bathroom, I suggest using it on the plane because you're not going to be able to when we land at Gatwick because there's no running water." Luckily, by the time I landed at about midnight last night, the water had been turned back on and it was fine. But yes, a very stressful time, I think, for everyone at the airport. But luckily, flights weren't affected, and I'm not complaining because I got home and managed to sit next to you today, Miriam. But I would have thought if an airport doesn't have running water, like from a health and safety perspective, you wouldn't be able to have the airport open. But apparently they just kept calm and carrying on, which I was very impressed with.
Broken Britain or just bad luck?
Yeah, it feels like a good compromise. I mean, look, if I was stuck in that, I would have been very grumpy indeed. But given that they could keep it going, given that they could get planes landing, it didn't apparently affect planes taking off or landing.
No, it didn't. My plane wasn't delayed.
And yeah, of course, you couldn't go to the toilet or anything else, which is pretty serious. But if you can land and get out of there pretty quickly, that's it. That's your Gatwick experience over.
Yeah, although I would like to know how an entire airport can lose its water supply like that. That seems kind of catastrophic. And then we also had, was it Heathrow or was it Gatwick as well? There was a fire at an electricity plant.
I think this was to do with pressure problems at a nearby treatment works. But Thomas, it does kind of speak to this idea that a lot of our infrastructure is creaking at the seams. There was this revelation in the Times at the weekend that the national grid nearly went offline in June because they were unable to control the electricity supply. Are we living on the edge?
I think when infrastructure was built 30 years ago and the population was millions lower than it is now, it's just a simple question of arithmetic, whereby when you built reservoirs for a population of 50 million and the country is now nearly 70 million, that's going to put huge pressure on water, particularly in the southeast. And same again for sewage treatment, same again for electricity. The infrastructure investment from subsequent governments hasn't quite been there, and I think this summer and previous summers and the general questions around energy capacity really go, right, we need to put both hands to the pump. So if Burnham's being serious over the summer and thinking about his plans, he needs to be thinking about some grid upgrades, he needs to be thinking about, he's been doing a lot of talk about water at the moment, so we'll see what he does around there as well.
Yes, his to-do list is certainly growing by the second, isn't it?
Well, Number 10 are briefing out that he's going to tackle all the problems that previous governments have avoided. I doubt he'll stay popular for long if he tries that.
Let's see. Zeb, Thomas, thank you very much for joining us. See you next hour.
Well, there's plenty more coming up on today's show. Police DEI cash splash. A bombshell report from Policy Exchange has revealed that diversity, equality and inclusion initiatives have cost the police £631 million since 2020. But should they spend the money on protecting the public instead?
But first, here is your 60-second news updates with Bethany LT.
Good morning. The headlines from the GB Newsroom. Andy Burnham is warning the NHS will collapse unless action is taken to fix social care, promising to bring significant change as quickly as he can. The terror suspect who drove his van into a crowd of people at a Pride event in Berlin has been shot and killed by police. 21-year-old Abdul Balou, who is accused of having Islamist links, killed one woman and injured 29 others. Tourists are being warned to stay away from southwest France, where wildfires are just 9 miles from Bordeaux, and officials are considering a total evacuation of the city. Around 300,000 people across France and Spain have been forced to leave their homes. Andy Burnham has said Britain's support for Ukraine remains unwavering as he prepares to welcome President Volodymyr Zelensky to Downing Street today, his first international visitor since becoming Prime Minister. And wildlife presenter Bill Oddie, who is best known for starring in The Goodies and presenting Springwatch, has died at the age of 85. Those are your latest headlines. I'll be back with more in half an hour.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Thanks, Bethany. Still to come.
German police have shot dead the man suspected of driving a van into a crowd near Berlin's Pride Festival, killing a woman and injuring at least 29 people.
Well, this is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Fewer showers around compared to what we had yesterday. Still very dry across much of England and Wales. Not only that, but we're also going to see temperatures climb through the early part of this week. For now, though, mostly dry for many areas. Some sunshine across much of the east, clouding over from the west through the course of the morning. Just a few showers filtering through, but actually most of these easing away by the afternoon. So mostly dry day ahead for many areas. Some fairly decent sunny spells across much of England and Wales, certainly towards the south. This is where we'll see the best of the temperatures, highs of around 26 degrees Celsius, but even further north, highs widely in the low 20s, so still feeling warm in the brightness. Then to finish off the day, across many eastern areas of Scotland, it should be mostly dry, but there will still be some showers pushing in from the west, filtering through at times. Similar across Northern Ireland, some showers before some longer spells of rain just start to edge their way in further west. Some drizzly showers perhaps across northwest England and parts of Wales, but still very dry for many areas. Through the overnight period, we'll start to see a bit of a north-south split in our weather, turning very unsettled towards the northwest with some spells of rain pushing their way northeastwards. This will start to turn quite heavy for some areas during the early parts of the morning. Once again, a mix of cloud, and it's likely the clearest skies will be across the far southeast. But for most, it's a slightly warmer night to come, especially across southern areas of England and Wales. Now on Tuesday, quite a lot of rain around towards the north. This will gradually push its way northeastward, still with some heavy areas of rain at times, eventually clearing for much of Northern Ireland, northern parts of England and Scotland, so brighter here by the afternoon, bar a few showers. But towards the south of this, it's still another dry day with some sunny spells by the afternoon. Temperatures higher compared to what we'll have today as well, pushing into the high 20s, if not the low 20s across the north.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News every week.
You're not only watching and listening to our programmes, you're becoming part of them too.
This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. In Kent, drivers on the M20 eastbound at Junction 7 will encounter roadworks with one lane closed. Northamptonshire's M1 southbound at Junction 18 is also undergoing improvements, causing a lane restriction. West Yorkshire's A1M is restricted due to roadworks between junctions 43 and 44 northbound. On Birmingham's M6, road upgrades cause lane closures between junctions 5 and 4A. Meanwhile, Buckinghamshire's M40 southbound between junction 5 and 4 is affected by maintenance. Cheshire's M56 eastbound and Coventry's M45 eastbound near Rugby Face lane closures. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Welcome back. It's 10:36. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Now, the man suspected of driving a van into a crowd at a pride parade in Berlin has been shot and killed after officials suggested it was an Islamist terror attack.
Abdul Balut was a German citizen with Lebanese heritage and was previously arrested in Lebanon for trying to join ISIS and planning a terrorist attack.
Well, one person was killed and at least 29 were injured when a van was driven into revellers, and the suspect then emerged from the car and began attacking people with what's been described as a stabbing weapon, probably a machete.
Well, joining us now in the studio is GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White. Mark, some fairly serious failures from the authorities here in allowing this man to be on the streets in any case.
Very significant failures in the process of trying to handle people with extremist tendencies that could pose a threat to society. This individual, just 21 years old, but had a list of assaults and robbery charges against him, and then also extremist charges. He travelled last year from Turkey out to Lebanon, had met up, we believe, with extremists from ISIS with a view to joining them. He was arrested, convicted and jailed for 3 months for that. Then this year also convicted of planning, preparing some kind of extremist attack. was jailed, we're told, of giving a sentence of 1 year and 10 months. But that seems, under German rules, we'd probably equate that to a suspended sentence, because it seems he was then put under the care and supervision of the probation service rather than actually being put behind bars. And of course, that meant he was free to do what is a very unsophisticated terrorist attack, which is just to get a hold of a vehicle, get a hold of a bladed article, and then carry out this horrific attack. And that just shows you, of course, the real difficulty that the authorities have in trying to get a handle on people if they have an extremist mindset and want to carry out an attack. They don't have to go and buy ingredients to prepare a bomb. They've long since been told by the likes of ISIS to go off to just grab a car, or some other vehicle, grab a bladed article or whatever, and just cause as many deaths and injuries as possible. And that's what they often do, these low sophistication but just as deadly attacks.
And what does this mean for us here in Britain? Will British authorities, for example, be looking at what's happened in Berlin and be reviewing our own security situation and those potentially on terror watch lists? Bearing in mind, of course, you've got our own Pride event in Brighton on Saturday.
Yeah, listen, it's a very good point, because we have a situation which is, rapidly unfolding here, where individuals that were convicted and jailed at the height of the Al-Qaeda terror threat, and then more recently with the ISIS terror threat, many of them are either back out on the streets or they're in the process of coming to the end of their sentences and being released as well. All have to be monitored back in the community. We don't have to think too far back to remember what happened at Fishmongers Hall on London Bridge in 2020, when a released terrorist prisoner on a rehabilitation course stabbed 2 people to death, injured 3 others, and then was shot to death on London Bridge. And then just 3 months after that, in February of 2020, another terrorist prisoner just released went on a stabbing rampage on Streatham High Road in South London before he was shot to death. So there's a big issue there about how you manage these people, this threat, back out in the community.
Okay. Mark White, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Well, counter-terrorism expert Hans-Jakob Schindler joins us live now from Berlin. Good morning to you. Serious questions for German authorities as to why this young man was out on the streets and had an ability to carry out this attack.
Yeah, of course. I mean, by definition, if there's a successful terror attack, of course, something has gone wrong. The system and the multi-layers of the systems are set up to prevent terror attacks, not to let them happen. There are several points where things, at least from what we know now, and we don't know the full picture yet, seems to have gone into an odd direction. Number one, why would the judiciary decide to release the individual early, despite the fact that he was convicted of an attempt to conduct a very serious violent act in Germany, which is quite a serious crime in Germany? Then he is in touch, or mandatorily in touch, with prevention experts who come to the conclusion that he's quite well adjusted. Now, for someone born in Germany to pretend to be well adjusted is not something that is too much of a challenge. And then thirdly, we don't know what information did the security forces in Berlin have at the time, because neighbors of the individual claim that he had been fairly openly not only talking about a terror attack, but very specifically a terror attack against the Pride Parade or Pride event in Berlin this year. So there are lots of details that we still need to get our hands and heads around, but it is clear something must have gone wrong. Otherwise, there was a lot of information on the individual. This should not have been happening.
Now, Mr. Schindler, we've just heard our security expert, Mark White, talk about the Islamist threat here in Britain. We know that it's substantial across Europe following decades, I suppose, of mass migration. But some of the organisers of the Pride Parade were very quick to point out that, in their view, the major threat to the Pride movement is the far right. Why have they come to that conclusion?
Well, one doesn't exclude the other. Of course, there is a serious threat against Pride parades from the violence-oriented right-wing extremists. But what is really important to understand is that globally, the Islamist milieu has the impression that they're actually winning this fight. This started in August 2021. No, we hadn't even left Afghanistan as an international community yet. The Taliban took over and re-established their relationship with Al-Qaeda the same way that it was until they were driven out of Afghanistan in 2002. We left West Africa as the Europeans, as the Americans, and now Al-Qaeda is besieging the capital of Mali, Bamako, and runs effectively 65% of Burkina Faso. So in the mind of Islamists, they are actually ahead of us in that fight. That is a massive motivating factor. And in a social media environment, nothing anywhere in the world stays within that region. Of course, Afghanistan immediately also affects internal and domestic security via social media in Germany, in Europe. Same thing for Africa. Same thing for the conflicts in the Middle East. We had not one, but two extremely serious attempts of Hamas to conduct terror attacks in Berlin at the end of 2023 and 2025. So we are in a very tense situation because we have multiple conflict zones around the European continent, from Ukraine to the Middle East, to North Africa, to Sub-Saharan Africa, and the fight against the Islamic regime in Iran. That means we have a super complex security situation.
Mr. Schindler, you alluded to the fact that there have been a number of terror attacks on German soil in recent years. After this latest one on Saturday, what is the mood like of ordinary German citizens? Has tolerance for this sort of thing eroded? And what are they asking or calling for their politicians and security services to do?
No, of course. I mean, look, I'm not a pollster, so I'm not feeling competent enough to talk about the Germans as such. But there is a very serious political discussion, started before this incident, but now gets even more pressing about reform of the legal basis on which the German police and intelligence service are allowed to operate, which is more restrictive than anywhere else in Europe except Austria. That really needs, especially when it comes to cyber and social media monitoring and disruption, that really needs to be reformed. Of course, this country, having experienced a communist as well as a fascist dictatorship in its past, has a very deep-seated caution towards any things that the security forces are allowed to do. But given the situation that we had over the last, this is not the first terror attack in Germany by a long shot in the last couple of years. We had a massive terror attack wave between May 2024 and May 2025. It really is high time to reform this and bring at least the services at the same level as the rest of Europe.
Hans-Jakob Schindler, thank you so much for joining us this morning. That's Hans-Jakob Schindler, who's a counter-terrorism expert. Cameron, I think that is such a good point. We know how resistant we are in this country to the idea of things like digital ID or surveillance, but in countries like Germany and in Eastern Europe, where they were under totalitarian regimes from the 30s till almost the 90s, the kind of natural resistance to being surveilled and watched must be absolutely huge. But then how do the counter-terrorism experts do their job if they can't watch people intensely? It's a very difficult situation.
It's a really fine balance, isn't it, for them, between not wanting to be seen to be controlling their citizens or spying on their own citizens, but also keeping people safe from people like the terrorist who just killed one and injured 29.
And ultimately it has been caused by mass migration, importing millions of people, a small fraction, but nevertheless a significant number of people who hold these views and are willing to carry out these attacks on Western society. But once those people are integrated, once it's normalised, it's very difficult to know what the security services can do.
It's a scary time. Well, the time is 10:46, and up next, wildlife presenter and comedian Bill Oddie has died at the age of 85 and will be reflecting on his incredible life and career.
But first, if you're thinking of heading off on your travels, here's the forecast of some of the top European destinations.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello there. Another heat wave is set to impact much of Europe, bringing intense sunshine. There's very little sign of any rain. Across parts of Iberia, temperatures could push back up into the high 30s, if not the low 40s degrees Celsius. The heat may be enough to produce some very hit or miss showers across parts of Italy, but not really any significant rainfall and not really sign of much rainfall to come. The sunshine is set to continue alongside the high temperatures.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
What do you think about where we're going to get our future athletes and our Olympians from when we're telling our children, oh, you can't go out and partake in sports today because it's a bit hot?
It's a bit hot. Yeah, I know, it's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, you're absolutely right. And, you know, not only are we cancelling sports days in some schools, and you said, you know, have to. No, they don't have to. This is the choice that the schools are making, and the heads are making. So my granddaughter's school, I've just done the school run this morning. They're not cancelling their sports day. You know, they're just being sensible. Why not move it to the morning? You know, I've just dropped her off now. It's 17 degrees. So they're perfectly capable of running at 9 o'clock in the morning instead of 2 o'clock in the afternoon. There's lots of ways that they could think outside of the box and do this. I mean, Labour is just about to cut 22% from the sports budget as well.
GB News, the People's Channel. Tubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
Industrial action in the 70s, all of that is part of the culture of that great town, and it's something that reflects a lot about the rest of us.
Right, but the word culture does not...
It doesn't mean opera.
That's history.
Yeah.
That's the history of the town. How is this money spent? Whose money is it, right? I presume it's taxpayers' money, i.e. my money anyway, and if you pay tax, Susie, that will
I do pay a bit, Kelvin.
Okay.
Yeah. Not as much as you, I'm sure.
No, but how much do we spend on the City of Culture for Hull? Do you know?
Well, look, so these shortlisted towns, they will receive £60,000 each to develop their full bids. Apparently, it's about restoring pride in local areas. They want to deliver a decade of national renewal. They want to shine a light on local visions and voices, they say, from across the UK.
GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's Newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
So you go along to the car showroom and only like 10%, at most maybe 15 pay cash. The rest buy on some form of financing. And you often buy, it's a bit like a mortgage, and it's like buying a mortgage from the estate agent, which we all know is a terribly bad idea. Yeah. But this is what people did. And the deal is, the scandal is, the guys in the showroom were acting as dealers and brokers, and they were in many cases inflating the interest rate that you paid so that they could get bigger commission. And they didn't declare that. So you basically ended up paying more for your car than you would otherwise have done if you'd gone into the open market and found yourself, you know, a better deal.
How did that come to light?
Well, over many years. I mean, this has been going on since 2007.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Here at GB News, we made a promise to tell your stories.
And on the 6th of August, we're marking 5 years of doing exactly that.
Celebrate with us by having your say. Join in the debates live on TV and radio.
And meeting your favourite presenters across the country, from Leeds to Aberdeen, from Belfast to Barry Island.
Plus, join me in Essex for our biggest live show of the year. Scan the QR code or visit gbnews.com/celebrate. Terms and conditions apply.
It's 9 minutes to 11. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Well, wildlife presenter and comedian Bill Oddie has died at the age of 85. He was best known for starring in The Goodies.
Come on, everybody, it's Gibbon time!
Oh, let's get more on that with GB News' entertainment editor, Alex Davies. Alex, Bill Oddie was a much-loved figure in Britain, wasn't he?
Yes, I mean, for myself, personally, I remembered him as this fantastic BBC wildlife presenter, which he actually did early in his career as well as the comedy. When he was at university, he was writing everything for The Goodies while still having papers published about the bird life in Birmingham. The guy was a very keen ornithologist, if I can pronounce that one right.
Ornithologist.
Ornithologist, let's go with that one. And what I've noticed in when somebody dies, obviously the fans all come out and pay tribute and whatnot. When someone like Bill Oddie dies, everybody comes out and pays tribute. The outpouring of love for him already, from wildlife fans to comedy fans, has been overwhelming, really. And I think that's just testament as to what character he was. His agent released a statement this morning, didn't reveal the cause of death or anything like that. He was 85 when he died. And the statement from his agent really sort of sums up the powerful of character that he is, and I'll just read it for you now. From his friend and agent David Foster, it said, "It is with deep sadness that I announce the passing of Bill Oddie, the country's best-loved birder. Bill was a multi-talented celebrity, wildlife presenter, broadcaster, comedian, writer, songwriter, musician and conservationist. Yet it was never fame that he valued. Instead, he encouraged us to respect and protect the environment. He taught us the wonder of it. He protested, lobbied and campaigned for it. He led the way, and people of all ages and backgrounds responded to his call." And that just goes to show, you know, this guy had such a big impact, not on just the world of comedy and a few songs with the goodies, but on wildlife as a whole. You know, nowadays he did Spring Watch and Autumn Watch, and some of the tributes have been he was the last great face of those shows, and I think a lot of people would agree.
A fitting tribute there. Alex, thank you very much for joining us with that.
Well, plenty more to come on Britain's Newsroom. Stay tuned. You're watching Britain's Newsroom. We are Britain's favourite morning show on GB News. Lots more coming up after your weather.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again, very good afternoon to you. I'm here with your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Some blustery wet weather across northern parts through the next 24 hours or so. Further south it's looking drier with temperatures rising as well. That's because we have high pressure currently to the southwest of us, but that is going to extend its way further north and east, keeping things generally settled in the south. A different story further north. There's been a fair bit of cloud, a bit of rain around at the moment, and there's more of that to come through the end of the day, with more persistent rain arriving through this evening and overnight, initially across Northern Ireland, but that wet weather spilling its way in across parts of Scotland, where it could turn quite heavy for some, especially in the west. All the while, towards the south and southeast, it's staying dry, some clear skies overnight, with temperatures only dropping to lows of around 16, 17, possibly 18 Celsius in some places, so a relatively warm night indeed. A wet start to the day across many parts of Scotland. Quite blustery, quite windy, especially in northern areas as well. Some of that rain could be a bit heavy, a bit persistent, especially towards western parts. Across Northern Ireland, it's cloudy. There'll be outbreaks of rain, a bit more intermittent here compared to across Scotland, where it's going to be more persistent. And a bit of rain for northern and western parts of England and Wales as well. Further south and east, well, it's drier. It's brighter as well, with some decent sunshine. And that's sort of how it's going to stay through the bulk of tomorrow, really. A lot of the wet weather across Scotland will break up and start to clear away, but it will be still quite windy in the far north. Elsewhere, outbreaks of rain here and there, mostly light for northern and western parts. Further south and east, staying dry. A decent amount of sunshine, and with that then temperatures rising. We're looking at highs in the low 30s again around the London area. Even elsewhere in the south, it's going to feel very warm, if not hot. More outbreaks of rain to come across northern parts through tomorrow evening. Further south across central and southern areas, a dry picture to end the day. More fine weather to come through the end of the week across southern areas, with temperatures peaking in the mid-30s perhaps on Wednesday. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
We're celebrating a golden summer with a terrific two-part Great British giveaway. First, you could win a sensational £60,000 in tax-free cash. And that's not all, as you'll also win our most precious prize to date, a fine gold bar worth over £5,000. For a chance to win, text GOLD to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5. £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB22 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 21st of August. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pulled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way. You will not want to miss it, trust me.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Bold.
They are under no illusion.
Ray, are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline.
Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel. As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's tonight, Late Edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
Good morning, it's 11 a.m. on Monday the 27th of July, live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Cameron Walker and Miriam Cates.
Is it time to scrap council tax and stamp duty? Reports suggest Andy Burnham is considering replacing both with a new tax on the value of your home, as Labour explores alternative ways to tax property. But we're asking, what could it mean for homeowners as well as buyers and sellers?
It's a problem that hasn't been addressed in this country by politicians for 35 years. And yet, would a revaluation of council tax, perhaps even a completely different system altogether, be possibly carried through? After all, the reason it hasn't been tackled is it creates winners and losers.
And get up and go to work. Young people will face being stripped of their benefits unless they agree to do some form of training or volunteer work under the proposed measures as ministers look for ways to rein in the UK's ballooning £333 billion welfare bill.
German police have shot dead the man suspected of driving a van into a crowd near Berlin's Pride Festival, killing a woman and injuring at least 29 people.
British tourists are being urged to flee southwestern France as apocalyptic wildfires close in on Bordeaux. More than 250,000 people have been evacuated, with flames now at the city's gates. We'll bring you the very latest.
And residents in the Highlands have criticised the handling of a wildfire that burnt for 10 continuous days. Locals say authorities were not quick enough with their evacuation order.
The locals at Nethy Bridge were evacuated from their homes over the weekend just to be allowed back. Several hours later, questions have been asked of the Scottish Government about whether they did enough to declare an emergency after help has been offered from the UK Government to deal with the fire still smouldering on the Cairngorm Hills behind me.
And police DEI cash splash. A bombshell new report has revealed diversity, equality and inclusion initiatives have cost the police £631 million since 2020. But should they spend the money on protecting the public instead?
And how would you feel about being forced to vote? Well, new Prime Minister Andy Burnham is reportedly considering the move. Proposals seen by the Prime Minister's advisers suggest a £10 fine for those who don't cast a ballot, with none of the above option also to be included.
We're attacking them tonight. We're taking out all of their capability for anything having to do with the Strait, with the Hormuz Strait.
Well, that was President Donald Trump 2 weeks ago, but now he's paused plans to escalate the war on Iran after being warned that the US is running low on missiles, with China eyeing up Taiwan. Is this the right move from the president?
Really interesting proposals, Cameron, about possibly making it compulsory to vote. Of course, this is what happens in Australia. It has for 100 years, and since, I think it was 1923 when they implemented it, turnout in elections has not fallen below 90%, which is considerably higher than here, where it hovers around 70 or even lower. I think 59% we had at one recent general election. It does seem a bit draconian to force people to vote. Well, it's not really being forced. You'd be fined if you didn't. But on the other hand, with fewer and fewer people voting, it does kind of question the legitimacy of our democracy.
It does, but I just feel uncomfortable with people being forced into a voting booth, especially when, you know, you can go and exercise your rights to democracy by spoiling your ballots anyway. But I just think it's a little bit, as you say, draconian, being forced to do that. On the other hand, of course, why should somebody vote for a party or a politician if they don't know anything about said party or politician, haven't really researched it, and therefore, if they don't want to vote, why should we force them?
But could this be the motivation to do a little bit of research, a little bit of understanding if you know you're going to have to vote? Well, I mean, you pay a £10 fine if you don't. I do think we do need some sort of electoral reform, though, because the postal vote system, for example, is being widely misused. I don't think you should get a postal vote unless you have a very good reason why you can't be in your polling booth on that day. Maybe it's disability, maybe a pre-planned business trip. But thousands and thousands of people just have them because they can't be bothered to go to the ballot box, and I think that's being misused.
Well, exactly. Well, let us know what you think. Should we have compulsory voting in the United Kingdom? Send us your views and comments. gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's news with Bethany Elsie.
Thank you both. Good morning. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom at 11:05. Andy Burnham has warned the NHS will collapse unless action is taken to fix social care. In his first major interview since becoming Prime Minister, he promised to bring significant change as quickly as he can. The Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, has urged him to rule out tax rises or increased borrowing to pay for the reforms. The PM has also said the government has to get really serious about reducing the welfare bill. He's suggested ministers could tighten the conditions to receive support, while insisting more should be done to help people into work. It comes as the number of those claiming personal independence payment has passed 4 million for the first time, roughly doubling since 2019, with many teenagers claiming the disability benefit for conditions such as anxiety. The terror suspect who's accused of driving a van into a crowd of people at a Pride event in Berlin has been shot and killed by police. Officers say the 21-year-old Abdul Balut was known to them and had Islamist links. Police found him after an hours-long manhunt. It's understood they opened fire after he ran at officers with a weapon. One woman was killed in the initial attack and 29 others injured. The German Interior Minister has raised the country's terror threat level, warning other copycat attacks couldn't be ruled out. Tourists are being warned to stay away from southwest France, where flames are now just 7 miles from Bordeaux, and officials are considering a total evacuation of the city. Around 300,000 people across France and Spain have been forced to leave their homes so far as severe wildfires continue to burn. More than 1,000 military personnel have been deployed to help with the response. Travel journalist Simon Calder gave some advice to those booked to visit the affected areas.
Clearly, this is a desperate situation for the communities there and people putting their lives on their line to fight the fires and so on. But as you say, there are many people booked to travel to this beautiful area of France who are now thinking, what do I do? British Airways is saying if you're booked in or out of Bordeaux, you can change your flight. But otherwise, if you fixed up everything on your own, it's kind of a matter of talking to each of the people involved and hoping that you can get things moved. But there's no automatic entitlement, and your travel insurance won't necessarily be of any help.
Meanwhile, emergency services in England and Wales are bracing for further wildfires here as another heat wave is expected this week. Temperatures could reach up to 33 degrees Celsius. A yellow heat health alert has been issued from Tuesday morning to Friday across the East and West Midlands, the south of England and Yorkshire. 2 people have been killed and 5 others injured, including a 2-year-old, after a shooting in the US state of Seattle. The city's mayor says the suspect, who opened fire at a food festival, has been taken into custody. Police are urging people to avoid the area. Musician Mark Taylor Canfield, who was playing at the event, questioned whether there should have been stronger security.
A lot of people didn't react at first because we thought, oh, it must be firecrackers or something. I mean, nobody thought that it was dangerous. But then there was a second volley. And that's when we saw people storming through the area. And all of my friends and I, we grabbed whatever equipment we had, our music equipment, and just started running because we felt like our lives could be in danger at that point. And it was, the crowd obviously knew something we didn't.
Andy Burnham will welcome Volodymyr Zelensky to Downing Street today, his first international visitor since becoming Prime Minister. Burnham says Britain's support for Ukraine remains unwavering. During the visit, he's set to announce the UK will share the technology behind its new stone-cloaked electronic warfare system, allowing Ukraine to produce it at scale. The device helps shield drones from Russian detection. And wildlife presenter Bill Oddie has died at the age of 85. He first found fame in the 1970s as a member of the comic trio The Goodies alongside Tim Brooke-Taylor and Graham Garden, but was best known for presenting wildlife programmes for the BBC, including Birding with Bill Oddie, Spring Watch and Autumn Watch. You're up to date for now. Let's have a look at the markets.
Going through the ceiling, finding the floor. Stilts Home Lifts sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
The pound will buy you $1.33 US and 1.17 euros. The price of gold is £3,073 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 10,784 points.
GB News Finance Report, brought to you by Stilts Home Lifts.
Hello, good morning and welcome. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Miriam Cates and Cameron Walker.
Good morning to you. And earlier we were discussing, should we make voting compulsory in this country? That's an idea being floated by our new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham. Another Andy, has got in touch. Good morning to you, Andy, saying, Miriam and Cameron, I suspect most of us who have given up voting have done so because democracy is the delusion that one politician or party differs from another. And as most governments get in with less than 35% of the electoral vote, the votes for democracy is an illusion. That's what Andy thinks. So are people just so frustrated and just out of touch with the system and just can't be bothered?
That is a very fair point. Of course, one election that did have a very, very high turnout was the Brexit referendum in 2016. But that's a yes-no question. which means that every single vote counts. Whereas in our first-past-the-post system, if you're, let's say, a Labour voter in a SNP area in Scotland, let's say I'm just trying to choose a random example, your vote will never, ever count. You can vote Labour each time and you'll never elect a Labour MP. Yeah. So there are many problems, I think, with our system that do mean that lots of people just aren't represented.
But then the question then becomes, should we have proportional representation as a voting system where every party, regardless of the amount of votes, gets a little bit of this slice of the pie?
There are pros and cons to that. But I think the interesting thing about the compulsory voting is how it would affect politicians. Because at the moment, politicians aim their policies at the groups who are most likely to vote. If they knew that everybody had to vote, including groups who currently don't really vote, like, for example, under 25s, would it change the kind of policies that they're offering? That would be a very interesting outcome.
Maybe they'll make it easier for young people to buy houses.
Exactly. Well, that's exactly the kind of thing that might happen if young people had to vote, whereas currently under 25s, fewer than 50% of them vote, so they're not represented at all.
Exactly. Well, let us know what you think. Keep those views coming in. gbnews.com/your say.
Well, Andy Burnham is reportedly planning a crackdown on youth sickness benefits in an effort to reallocate billions of pounds in funding for social care and defence.
Well, young people will face being stripped of their benefits unless they agree to do some form of training or volunteer work under the proposed measures.
Well, the proposal comes as part of an effort to reduce the country's £333 billion a year welfare bill. And ministers hope that training and voluntary work will help to bring sick young people back into the workforce.
Well, joining us now is GB News Deputy Political Editor Tom Harwood. Tom, good morning to you. I vaguely remember that Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer attempted to reduce the welfare bill, but 80-plus Labour MP backbenchers didn't allow them. What's going to be different this time?
Well, exactly, Cameron. That was in many ways a pivotal moment of the last ministry, of the Starmer ministry. The moment when, despite Keir Starmer having won that enormous majority, 411 seats out of the 650 in the House of Commons, despite that enormous majority, he was unable to pass a key piece of welfare reform. In many ways, that was when the writing was on the wall for Keir Starmer's time as Prime Minister. He was known to have been the man to have won the majority. But if he couldn't wield the majority to produce any kind of substantive change, then frankly, what was the point? And at that moment, I think a lot of people started to take a second look at the viability of Keir Starmer as Prime Minister. Andy Burnham now faces precisely the same challenge, but he has the advantage of seeing how wrong it went for the last Prime Minister. And we've started to see this with his rhetoric over the weekend. Clearly, he knows that there needs to be welfare reform. It needs to be fairly substantial given the numbers that we're looking at. In terms of health, sickness, disability benefits, we now spend more on that than we do on our armed forces. And it's growing by the day. More than 1,000 people sign up to PIP. Now, that's something that Andy Burnham hasn't spoken about yet, but is another big part of this every single day. I think at one point it was 3,000 a day signing on to claim PIP. And one of the peculiar things about this massive expansion of people claiming disability benefits and the like is that it is overwhelmingly concentrated, this growth, in young people, which you wouldn't ordinarily expect to see. You might think that perhaps older people are more likely to be disabled as they grow old. But no, in this country, strangely, peculiarly, we're seeing a massive expansion in young people claiming these sorts of benefits. Curiously, it's not an expansion that's happening elsewhere in the world. It's a problem particular to Britain, which makes people think that there might be a policy solution rather than something intrinsic about this. But what Andy Burnham is proposing here, he's going to have to sell to his MPs as a way to help people rather than just a way to save money.
Well, Tom Harwood, our Deputy Political Editor, thank you very much for that report. Well, joining us now is the Campaigns Director at the Taxpayers Alliance, William Yarwood. William, good morning. We've been speaking to Tom about the proposed benefits changes for young people, but one of the other policies floated in the press today is an idea about reforming council tax and ending stamp duty and instead replacing it with an annual tax based on the value of your property. What do you think about that proposal?
Yeah, good morning, Cameron. Good morning, Miriam. Thanks for having me on the show. And yeah, like most of Burnham's plans thus far, there's not much detail to it, is there? I mean, I'm in favour of scrapping stamp duty. I think that's a very, very positive move. But indeed, the Conservative Party last autumn already announced they were going to push forward with that. When it comes to council tax re-evaluation, I mean, that's a very complicated subject overall. I mean, is there going to be constant evaluations every single year? What are the administrative costs going to be for that? And also, you have to consider the fact that many people, especially pensioners in a variety of places around the country, are living in houses which have just gone up in value over time. And just because, they live in very large houses which have increased in value doesn't mean they could possibly afford the council tax on those houses. So there's lots of unanswered questions here from Burnham. And along with most of his policies, Miriam, I wish he'd outlined some details and actually talk to the media in more detail so we can have more scrutiny of these policies. Because at the moment, with most of these policies, we're kind of just in the wind.
Yeah, and of course, house prices in the southeast are, on average, vastly higher than those in the north of the country. So wouldn't that leave a situation where local councils in London and the southeast have far more cash to play with than those in the north of England?
Yeah, I mean, that's assuming these are re-evaluations actually perform in the way that they'd expect them to. And yeah, this is a way of addressing so-called unfairness between the North and the South. But if this went forward, like you said, Cameron, you could see places in London and indeed in the South East and possibly other places receiving more council tax in total, which means they could spend it possibly more on local government priorities. But of course, when it comes to local government, most of their spending is statutory spending imposed from the Westminster down, namely on and social care. So whatever money was raised from it would likely not go into frontline services and would go into these statutory obligations which councils have to spend money on, otherwise they get taken to court. But because I very much doubt that if they collected more money from this form of tax, they could actually consider cutting it, council tax overall, because once you give councils the ability to levy more taxes on local people, the likelihood that they're going to do so rather than reducing taxes is very high.
William, you mentioned the cost of social care and how that is currently blowing a huge hole in most councils' budget. That's also on the Burnham agenda for reform. It's rumoured that he's considering a death tax, that he's trying to make social care free for all. Is there a pain-free way of reforming this system, or do we just have to accept that it's going to cause a tax rise somewhere along the line?
Well, I don't accept that it's going to cause a tax rise down the line, or at least it shouldn't. I mean, the idea of imposing a 10% levy on basically everyone to pay for social care, I think, is pretty egregious. I mean, that's just inheritance tax in another name. And we at the TPA want inheritance tax completely abolished. It's not fair that assets and income that you've had throughout the entirety of your life, which have been taxed throughout the entirety of your life, are then taxed again to give to the government to spend on whatever their priorities must be. But there's no pain-free way to deal with social care. I mean, we at the TPA have advocated things like eligibility testing and means testing for these kind of things before, but again, they're not particularly popular. And obviously with Andy Burnham wanting to do whole-scale social care and indeed welfare reform and trying to get his backbenchers, that would be very, very difficult indeed. But yeah, look, this is going to have a massive cost. I think the overall estimated cost is in the tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions of pounds. I mean, I believe he gave the estimate about £18 billion, but that's not really going to cover the shortfall at all. And look, again, Miriam, look, Cameron, I mean, I still want more detail from Burnham on this issue, and we're going to see that hopefully later this week. But if it's just tinkering around the edges, if it's just tax rises and not fundamental reform to the overall system, and indeed who has the responsibility for allocating it, then I don't think all that much is really going to change.
OK, Campaigns Director at the Taxpayers Alliance, William Yarwood, thank you for joining us.
So many different things that he wants to do. I think he's going to call an election, Cameron, to try and get a mandate for that.
I mean, there's a lot of very expensive policies he's starting to push. Let's see if he can...
And difficult policies that will take a long time for people to feel the benefit of, and that's why I think an election would be a better prospect for him.
Well, let's see.
Not that I want one at all. I just think that may be where we're headed.
OK. Well, the time is 11:20 and time for the Great British Giveaway now. And your chance to win big in our Golden Summer celebration of £60,000 in tax-free cash and a real fine gold bar worth over £5 grand. Here's all the details of how you can win.
We're celebrating a golden summer with a terrific two-part Great British giveaway. First, you could win a sensational £60,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like this year. What would you do with that? And that's not all, as you'll also win our most precious prize to date, a fine gold bar worth over £5,000. It's pure gold to own, trade or gift to a loved one and secure their financial future. So make sure you don't miss your chance to bank over £65,000 worth of prizes in our golden summer celebration. For a chance to win £60,000 in tax-free cash and a real gold bar, text GOLD to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB22 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 21st of August. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pooled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, coming up next on Britain's Newsroom, is Prime Minister Andy Burnham really ready to hand power to reform councils?
We'll be going through all of that and much more with Sebastian Salek and Thomas Day. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Here at GB News, we made a promise to tell your stories.
And on the 6th of August, we're marking 5 years of doing exactly that.
Celebrate with us by having your say. Join in the debates live on TV and radio.
And meeting your favourite presenters across the country, from Leeds to Aberdeen, from Belfast to Barry Island.
Plus, join me in Essex for our biggest live show of the year. Scan the QR code or visit gbnews.com/celebrate. Terms and conditions apply. Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howard. This is the show where each week we see what's happening in the world of culture, current affairs and politics.
First we'll say, welcome to the UK.
And we're not afraid to use our free speech so that you can use yours.
It's not controversial in the slightest to anyone who hasn't lost their mind.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights at 7 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Miriam and Cameron, and also we are joined in the studio by our commentator Sebastian Salek and former Conservative advisor Thomas Day. Good morning again to both of you. Shall we start with electoral reform? From time to time, it is floated this idea that we should change our voting system, but compulsory voting, that's never really been on the cards before in this country.
I think it's one of those things that a lot of people say we should do, and it's something that I'm sympathetic to. I think it's a moral duty, I think, of every citizen to vote. Something instilled in me by my parents, and I think it's very much something everyone should do. But there is that inherent British feeling of we shouldn't force anyone to do anything unless it's absolutely necessary. But I think you look at the last general election, and some constituencies had incredibly low turnouts. I was sort of doing a little bit of looking before, and you had Manchester Rusholme, the seat of Asfel Khan MP. He had a 40% turnout in his seat.
40%? That's a general election?
Yeah. So 60% of the people that lived in his constituency didn't turn out to vote for him or any other candidate. So I think the calls on, and you think about local elections, the turnout's even lower.
Usually below 30%.
And they have power over taxes, the laws, and that govern our lives. And so I think that there's an increasingly compelling argument to have a serious reform look at this.
Well, Rob's got in touch and says that no government has any right to demand or force anyone to vote, no more than they have the right not to allow you to vote. It's called a democracy, the freedom to exercise your right. Would we lose a democracy, the idea of democracy, if you're forced to vote?
Not at all, because remember what we're saying here, it's not you must vote for a political party, it's you must turn up to the polling station and fill out a piece of paper. You can spoil your vote, and in a sense, we don't really solve the turnout problem, because all of those people who didn't turn out, in theory, could turn up and spoil their ballot, and then you just have a different metric that measures the same thing. But what it does do is it kind of sanctifies voting as this thing that was hard won, hard fought for, and that we must take seriously. And it comes within a wider package, I think, of making it easier to vote. If you're, turning election day on a Sunday, if you are making voting online possible, if you're scrapping voter ID, you've got this whole basket of policies that just make it easier for people to cast their ballot.
We could just see it as another civic duty, like, for example, paying tax or serving on a jury. These are all things that you have to do. If you are a British citizen and you want the rights of a British citizen, they are the civic duties that we expect. Why not add voting to the list?
Well, I agree with you, Miriam. And
We've got too much agreement.
I think the decline in voter turnout, though, comes out of the fact that the amount of times where, we've knocked on doors in the past, Miriam, you and I, and you'd knock on doors like, what, another election? I only just voted, I thought. And
also the perception that you change the government, but nothing changes.
Exactly.
And that actually the past 30 or 40 even years of government have been pretty similar regardless of the party in charge.
Well, let me play devil's advocate for a second here. Never. So, what happens if you have all of these people who are forced to vote, and let's say they don't want anything to do with politics, they haven't researched the candidates, haven't researched the policies, and they just go with whoever they like the name of on the day. You could argue that that's a democracy, but also they could be voting for something which, in their heads, ethically, they would not hope in hell of them voting for it. And what if we get lots of...
That's their problem.
Yeah, I know, but it's not their problem, is it? Because it's the whole country that is going to the polls for a specific party.
That's a failure of a political candidate to offer something to them. That's not their fault. That's the parties not offering something for them.
What if they're not watching TV or looking at TikToks of Andy Burnham on social media, though? If they simply do not want to engage in politics
then
and
they
democracy.
can spoil their ballots. But this is it. Thomas, you make a great point, and I heard this analogy once, is that convincing someone to vote is like convincing someone to come to a football match. You can give them the tickets for free, you can drive them to the match, but if they don't care about football, they won't go. And that is our duty as any of us who ever do any campaigning. That is what we're trying to do. We're trying to excite people. I know that feels like a faraway concept in a very tiresome period of electoral history, but you do have to make people excited about going out to vote. And yes, you can make it compulsory. I think that's important. But you should inject some passion into it as well.
Some countries have a national holiday on election day. I mean, of course, the temptation there would be to just go to the beach or something rather than voting.
Or go to the pub and then vote after 5 pints in. Maybe
There'll be lots of spoiled ballots.
Only takes 10 minutes.
Indeed. Right, let's move on to another story. UK police forces have spent more than £630 million on anti-racist policies, or DEI, since the murder of George Floyd in 2020. That's an awful lot of money, isn't it, on this kind of policy?
It is a lot of money. I think too much money to be spending on something like this. Now, I don't think anyone would argue that they wouldn't want their police force to not be prejudiced. I don't want to interact with a police officer and be judged by who I am characteristically. And when you have so many public examples of when things go wrong, it's in part to protect themselves for when they're alleged to have committed a wrongdoing. But nearly £750 million £1 billion spent on it. I think the police need to justify that kind of spending.
Well, Seb, there have been so many accusations of two-tier policing, and one of the flashpoints, I suppose, was this update to the race action plan in 2025, which told police forces that they shouldn't be colourblind, that they should have equal outcomes, but not necessarily treat people equally, treat people the same.
Well, it's about equity versus equality, isn't it? And there were two discussions going on here, really. The first is, do we think DEI is something we should spend money on, full stop? And the other is, do we think that we're getting value for money for it? And in terms of value for money, I don't know. That's for the police to justify what have they spent the money on, what's happened as a result, and therefore we can make a judgment on the 600 million. But the argument that we should spend money on DEI, I think, there is no counter-argument to that. You know, we saw what happened with Sarah Everard. We saw the fallout and the reviews into the Met and other police forces. We saw the horrible misogyny, homophobia, racism that came out of the police. That's what this money is tackling. You know, whether it's successful or not, different issue. But I would say that is very, very important. I'd be very happy for my tax money to go there.
I mean, historically, you know, we've had the murder of Stephen Lawrence in 1999, lots of police failings, particularly about the racism accusations and found to be. With all of the history, and you mentioned Sarah Everard as well, is there a danger that the police forces are trying to overcorrect and spend too much money on this kind of thing, where arguably it could be done far more efficiently with vetting or whatever, so we can have the anti-racist policies of the police force, but also they're spending money on actually tackling crime on the ground at the same time?
Well, I think that's where you saw the pushback on the Henry Novak case, where it deemed the example of when it went wrong the other way, but actually it actually exemplifies it even further, where you want to be treated equally under the law. I think that's one of the core foundational principles of common law and what it is to live in this country. And the fact of the matter is, the police have so many more responsibilities to do now within our communities. It's not just cops and robbers anymore. They have to go, and when they get that call, it may be a domestic abuse case, it may be a murder case. They just don't know what they're going out. And they've got to think on a dime. They've got to be able to turn so quickly. And being able to have that training, that rigidity, it's almost, you know, to make sure that they go to a default setting almost to go, this is how I need to act in this situation. So it helps protect them, I think, more than anything.
Well, Thomas Day, Sebastian Spatsalek, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Well, plenty more to come here on Britain's Newsroom.
We're attacking them tonight. We're taking out all of their capability for anything having to do with the Strait, with the Hormuz Strait.
Well, that was President Donald Trump 2 weeks ago, but now he's paused plans to escalate the war on Iran after being warned that the US is running low on missiles. Well, with China eyeing up Taiwan, is this the right move from the president?
Well, that's coming up, but first of all, your 60-second news update with Bethany Elsey.
Thank you both. Good morning. The headlines from the GB Newsroom. Andy Burnham is warning the NHS will collapse unless action is taken to fix social care, promising to bring significant change as quickly as he can. The terror suspect who drove his van into a crowd of people at a Pride event in Berlin has been shot and killed by police. 21-year-old Abdul Balou, who is accused of having Islamist links, killed one woman and injured 29 others. Tourists are being warned to stay away from southwest France, where wildfires are just 7 miles from Bordeaux, and officials are considering a total evacuation of the city. Andy Burnham has said Britain's support for Ukraine remains unwavering as he prepares to welcome President Volodymyr Zelensky to Downing Street today, his first international visitor since becoming Prime Minister. And the comedian and conservationist Bill Oddie, who was best known for starring in The Goodies and presenting Springwatch, has died at the age of 85. Those are your latest headlines. I'll have a full roundup for you at midday.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Thanks, Bethany. Well, at midday, good afternoon, Britain, with Mark and Emily. Good morning to you both.
Yes, good morning. Mark White, good morning. Well, we're both pretty angry this morning, aren't we?
Yeah, it's in response to the terror attack in Berlin, an Islamist attack. But what does Labour MP Kate Osborne decide that she wants to post out on X? All about how Reform and indeed GB News are upping the extremist rhetoric that's leading to these attacks.
No mention of Islamism. No mention of intolerance in parts of the Muslim community. Of course, instead, she goes after the far right.
Right, OK.
Which is something that a lot of left-wing politicians prefer to do.
It's this willful blindness, isn't it? You know, everything is there in black and white, all the statistics there about the Islamist threat. You were talking about this earlier, Mark. And yet they're saying, look over here, look over here. Astonishing.
It is astonishing, and I think she should probably... well, I'd like to see her come on the
channel
really, to explain herself.
Explain yourself or remove that nonsense that she's posted, because it is just absolute nonsense. I mean, you know, for a start, it's not a right-inspired attack. It's exactly the opposite. It's not in this country. It's in Germany. I'm not sure how many Islamists watch GB News in Germany. I don't think probably too many.
Well, that's the point, yes. How many of these people who have conducted homophobic terrorist attacks were watching GB News and voting for Reform?
Well, yes, I was going to say, the last time I checked, Reform wasn't a party in Germany.
No. Well,
and not particularly well supported by the Islamist community either, I would suggest.
But also, we need to hear from Andy Burnham on immigration. We don't know who is in the boats that are crossing the channel every single day. We know that perhaps there are Iranian agents on some of those boats. Are we literally walking into another terrorist attack here in Britain?
And murder suspects as well, because remember the mega dinghy that we reported on last week?
Yes.
165 on board a single dinghy. Well, it seems that the beach that mega dinghy left from, there was a stabbing. Another migrant found dead in the dunes, and the suspects believed to have been on that mega dinghy. Now, authorities here are trying to identify who they could be. It just points to the threat coming across the channel. We have no idea who these individuals are.
But again, if you suggest that, some on the left will say, you can't say that.
You're very hateful.
You can't say that. You're
hateful. Rhetoric.
No, you just got to see what's in front of your own eyes.
Well, all of that coming up at midday. Thank you both. Looking forward to it.
Well, coming up next on Britain's Newsroom, residents in the Highlands have criticised the handling of a wildfire that burnt for 10 continuous days. Locals say authorities were not quick enough with their evacuation order.
This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good morning, I'm here with your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Whilst there will be a bit of wet weather across northwestern parts of the UK today and some blustery winds in the far north, further south it's a much drier, sunnier picture. That's because we have high pressure building that's pushing its way in. That's going to lead to our temperatures rising even further as we go through this week. More on that in a second. For the time being, yes, it's quite cloudy, a bit of drizzly rain across parts of Northern Ireland, northwestern parts of Scotland, even across some parts of northern and western England and Wales perhaps, but further south and east it's a drier, sunnier picture, and with that temperatures rising to highs of around 27 or 28, so feeling very warm if not hot here for some of us, a bit fresher towards the northwest. And towards the northwest, there is some more persistent rain that's going to arrive later on. So it's a cloudy and relatively damp end to the day across much of Scotland. Some glimmers of sunshine, perhaps for some eastern parts, but wetter towards the west. More rain to arrive later. And that rain then will be spilling its way in across Northern Ireland through the evening and the start of the night. Meanwhile, northern western parts of Wales and England having quite a damp end to the day, but the rest of the country, well, largely dry, but more cloud than we'll have had during the daytime. That rain that I mentioned then spilling its way in from the west, so pushing across Northern Ireland and then large chunks of Scotland overnight. And it will be quite persistent, could be some heavier bursts, particularly towards western areas. Further south and east, staying dry, clearer skies, relatively warm night for most of us, temperatures generally only dropping to the mid or even high teens Celsius. So a very wet start to the day across northern areas, Scotland in particular, but also Northern Ireland, northern parts of England having some outbreaks of rain. But yes, the heaviest, most persistent rain and also the strongest winds will be in the far north of the country. Further south, it's a drier picture still, lots of sunshine and temperatures even higher than today. Good chance that we're going to get back into the low 30s, especially around London. Bye-bye.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates,
5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5.
You got me. You got me good there.
Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah.
Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace
Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's tonight, Late Edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 11:41. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Cameron Walker and Miriam Cates.
Well, residents in the Scottish Highland village of Nethy Bridge have been allowed to return home now that a large wildfire is no longer considered an immediate threat.
Well, a major incident was declared in the Cairngorms National Park after the blaze raged for the past 11 days.
GB News Scotland reporter Tony Maguire joins us from Nethy Bridge. Tony, good to see you. Are the fires broadly under control now?
Yes, I mean, I think over the weekend we saw what has been described by locals as apocalyptic scenes outside Nethy Bridge, so much so that on Friday, as you say, residents were asked to leave their homes. They have now returned the following day, but many of them have grown increasingly frustrated at the slow government response. Many took to social media to ask the Scottish Government to hurry up and declare an emergency incident, but it wasn't until over the weekend that a cascade of government communications then came out and indeed culminating in a request to the UK government for help, including Chinook helicopters and military personnel. The UK government eventually came back and said we can't supply that, but offered them an alternative. But since the conditions have changed here, predicted rain finally fell on the fire, aiding the 500 odd firefighters who were dealing with the fire just over the horizon here. Just to give you a sense of the scale, the smoke at one point in Aberdeen had blown all the way over to the east coast, with some residents in towns there saying they could only have about 50 feet of visibility. But now it's blowing the other way. We can see it going across the entire mountain range of the Cairngorms, and actually just over to the right side you see where around 40 firefighters are now fighting what they're calling kind of hot spots. So the fire is still burning, but indeed something of a shadow of its former self, nothing like the hills on fire that we actually saw over the weekend here. But John Swinney, First Minister, he had come out and said that his thoughts are with the families that have all been disturbed over the weekend. And Neil Gray, one of government ministers, he has said that the Scottish Government will now look to how they respond to these fires. In fact, it was Police Scotland who was the first to basically declare an incident, quickly followed by the Scottish Government. But residents here at Nethy Bridge, well, they've said the Scottish Government took too long to dither.
GB News' Scotland reporter Tony Maguire, thank you very much.
Well, these wildfires seem to be everywhere in Europe. If you are thinking of heading on your travels, you do need to be careful to check that where you are about to go is still safe to travel. But here is the forecast for our top European destinations.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. Another heat wave is set to impact much of Europe, bringing intense sunshine. There's very little sign of any rain. Across parts of Iberia, temperatures could push back up into the high 30s, if not the low 40s degrees Celsius. The heat may be enough to produce some very hit or miss showers across parts of Italy, but not really any significant rainfall and not really sign of much rainfall to come. The sunshine is set to continue alongside the high temperatures.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
There was a Ryanair flight from Thessaloniki in Greece, and a part of the plane hit the window and pulled it out. And so this man, a 61-year-old Serbian man, was sucked out of the window. And his wife, she says that she was desperately holding onto his legs to keep him inside the plane for 5 minutes. Wow. It was horrendous. Apparently the aircraft did eventually land normally and passengers were safe and a replacement airline was sent. He was taken to hospital with friction burns. It was a part of the propeller had come loose from the engine and it had hit the window, and that's what had taken the window out. So it wasn't as though it was thought to be loose in the first place. But can you imagine?
No.
I mean,
I don't want to.
Unbelievable.
I'm
not a good flyer, I have to admit. This terrifies me. GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's Newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
Weight loss jabs could help children as young as 6 who are living with obesity. When did we start saying living with obesity? Can we not say obese children? Is that not politically correct? Well, delighted to be joined now by Sarah LeBrock, Director of All About Obesity. Sarah, I think a lot of people will feel slightly uneasy about children getting on these jabs, simply because we sort of expect, I don't know, diets to be managed by parents.
Yeah, I can totally understand why people would think that. But the point we're not talking about just overweight children here. We're talking about children living with obesity. And interestingly, you say, why do we say living with obesity? It's because they're living with a chronic condition.
GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's Newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
What does this kind of day mean to you, kind of coming and doing this every year?
Well, I feel that I'm doing this for my wife because she used to sell poppies properly, really, and I used to help her for 20-odd years. And I feel like I'm doing it for her, really. But it is nice to think that everybody appreciate what we did for being in the forces.
But tell me about your service, because you got sent out to the Far East, didn't you?
Yes. I just got engaged because I didn't think I was going to get called up, but then I did.
In your jacket here, you've got one medal for national service and one for that Hong Kong medal for that.
To be honest, I was 18 years old and I was very excited about going. It was an adventure to me.
The People's Channel.
Welcome back. Now, major combat operations in Iran have been paused by Donald Trump after he was warned that America was running low on missiles.
Well, the US president's called off strikes on the Islamic Republic over the weekend after officials warned of shortages, particularly of interceptor missiles used to defend American bases from Iranian missile and drone attacks.
Well, joining us now is the former Royal Navy officer and defence expert, James Gator. James, welcome back to the programme. Now, the rumour that the missile stocks has been running low has been coming out of the Pentagon for a while, but it now seems to have been officially acknowledged. What are the implications of this, not only for the conflict in the Middle East, but also, I suppose, for the safety of the West as a whole?
Well, good morning, Miriam. Yes, this is a worrying development, but not a surprising one. Ever since this conflict began, ill-advised as it was, the time it's taken to manufacture a highly complex interceptor missile is less than the time it takes to fire one and use one, and the expenditure has far exceeded the production ever since the very beginning. And this has a number of impacts. Yes, it has an impact, of course, upon American interests directly in the Gulf, as we've seen recently, American service people sadly killed as a result of Iranian action. But it also has an impact on American allies in the region who rely on these missiles to, in effect, act as an iron dome for incoming Iranian attacks.
James, what do you think China will be thinking about all of this? Of course, we kind of expect that they are eyeing up Taiwan, and if the US seems to be stuck in what is appearing to be quite a prolonged regional conflict in the Middle East, will this give them leverage or the confidence to pursue their military action if they wish to?
Well, if I might mash up a Chinese proverb, I think they're waiting by the river for the bodies to float by. The simple fact is that they'll be looking at this as ever, pragmatically, and seeing how the world's greatest armed forces are coming up against the limits of their power. And as we've discussed before on this programme, the issue that the Americans are encountering is one of asymmetry, i.e. their powers are by definition the greatest, but they have the most incredible military materiel. But what they don't have is the advantage of geography, and the Iranians have that in spades. Anyone could have told Donald Trump that prior to this conflict starting. And I think that the thing that Trump has really given the Iranians is the understanding now that they didn't have before that closing the Straits of Hormuz is permissible and possible. And the retaliation is not existential for the Iranians. And the Chinese will see this and they will understand the same lessons with regard to Taiwan or any other interests they might have.
James, we're running short on time, but do you think it's a reminder also for this country about how important those supply chains are, the manufacturing know-how to be able to produce lots of material, possibly at short notice?
You're absolutely right, Miriam. Wes Streeting, with all his military experience, has his work cut out. The military-industrial complex in the UK is as broken as our armed forces and as ill-supplied. And indeed, on the subject of stocks, ours have also been allowed to be drawn down by virtue of our donations to the conflict in Ukraine. So yes, you're absolutely correct. An army marches on its stomach, but it also requires materiel in order to conduct operations, especially in these technological times.
And how difficult is it, James, just very, very briefly, to create all of these materials in Britain itself, so you're not relying on supply chains which arguably slow down the process?
Well, Cameron, the fortunate thing is we still manufacture in the UK. It is untrue to say that we do not. We have some incredible companies manufacturing everything from basic material, bullets, bombs, rifles, etc., through to incredible technology of the future, unmanned of all sorts. And so I have faith, but it needs the government to fund these things and to think holistically about how industry and the military can work together in protection of British interests.
James Gator, thank you as always for your expertise on this programme. Well, Cameron, I think that's all from Britain's Newsroom. It's been a pleasure presenting with you as always. Lots of really interesting stories. It's not a silly summer at all, is it going to be this year?
Not at all. Very busy one with the new Prime Minister.
You'll be very busy, but so will Mark and Emily, because they're up next with Good Afternoon Britain, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Well, a Labour MP has bizarrely linked the attack in Berlin, the Pride attack in Berlin, on the rise of the Reform Party here in the UK, and also this channel, GB News. Mark.
Yeah, we know these Islamist extremists are very big supporters of reform and viewers of GB News, so hands up.
Why do the left find it so difficult to just mention Islamism?
Yeah, the extremism and the intolerance that comes from Islamism, where they throw gay people off the roofs of buildings in Iraq and Syria. Perhaps, that's somewhere she should be looking rather than at the likes of Reform or GB News.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again, very good afternoon to you. I'm here with your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Some blustery wet weather across northern parts through the next 24 hours or so. Further south it's looking drier with temperatures rising as well. That's because we have high pressure currently to the southwest of us, but that is going to extend its way further north and east, keeping things generally settled in the south. A different story further north. There's been a fair bit of cloud, a bit of rain around at the moment, and there's more of that to come through the end of the day, with more persistent rain arriving through this evening and overnight, initially across Northern Ireland, but that wet weather spilling its way in across parts of Scotland, where it could turn quite heavy for some, especially in the west. All the while, towards the south and southeast, it's staying dry, some clear skies overnight, with temperatures only dropping to lows of around 16, 17, possibly 18 Celsius in some places, so a relatively warm night indeed. A wet start to the day across many parts of Scotland. Quite blustery, quite windy, especially in northern areas as well. Some of that rain could be a bit heavy, a bit persistent, especially towards western parts. Across Northern Ireland, it's cloudy. There'll be outbreaks of rain, a bit more intermittent here compared to across Scotland, where it's going to be more persistent. And a bit of rain for northern and western parts of England and Wales as well. Further south and east, well, it's drier, it's brighter as well, with some decent sunshine. And that's sort of how it's going to stay through the bulk of tomorrow, really. A lot of the wet weather across Scotland will break up and start to clear away, but it will be still quite windy in the far north. Elsewhere, outbreaks of rain here and there, mostly light for northern and western parts. Further south and east, staying dry. A decent amount of sunshine, and with that then temperatures rising. We're looking at highs in the low 30s again around the London area. Even elsewhere in the south, it's going to feel very warm, if not hot. More outbreaks of rain to come across northern parts through tomorrow evening. Further south across central and southern areas, a dry picture to end the day. More fine weather to come through the end of the week across southern areas, with temperatures peaking in the mid-30s perhaps on Wednesday. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's the Great British Giveaway Golden Summer Celebration. Your chance to win 2 fantastic prizes. There's an incredible £60,000 in tax-free cash. Plus, you'll also get your hands on a fine gold bar worth over £5,000. For a chance to win £60,000 in tax-free cash and a real gold bar, text GOLD to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry starts at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB22 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 21st of August. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pulled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain is not just a geographical expression. We are a people.